in order to figure out the equation for the absolute value, kind of thinking about the way our equations were written, and I can look above to see the way our equations are written, or an inequality. We need in the equation the number on the left, what it would be equal to, or what it would be less than or greater than, and we need the number in the middle. So those are the two things that we need to find when we're trying to write an equation or an inequality for absolute value. So if I go to my numbers that I have on this number line, the first thing we're going to find is the number in the middle. So I need you to figure out how can you find the exact value that would be in the middle of 46 and 30. So I want you to get the number that's directly in the middle of these two values. How could you find the number that would be in the middle of 46 and 130? Faith, how could you find that number?
You could do the mean, so
Yeah.
add both of them together and then divide by 2.
Perfect. So Faith, if you add those together and divide by 2, what do you get?
88.
Awesome. So the middle number is 88. That middle number is what goes in our absolute value. And it's going to be a minus 88. And the reason it's minus is because when we start writing equations, that minus sign is part of a standard equation. So even though there's a minus there, that minus is part of the equation. So that's like a part of the formula for the equation. The 88 is positive, so that's the number we're looking at. So that's our middle number. The value that goes on the other side is the distance from that 88 to 130, or it's that same distance from 46 to 88. That's what goes on the other side. So what is the distance from 46 to 88, or from 88 to 130? So what's that distance in between those two values? Anybody know what that distance is? Faith, what is that distance?
42.
And is it the same on both sides?
Yeah.
And it better be, because that's what absolute value means. Absolute value is a distance that a number is on the left and the right of whatever happens to be in the center. And the center isn't always 0. So in this case, our center is 88, but absolute value is that same distance on the left of 88 and the right of 88, and that's the 42. So that's why we place a 42 over here on the other side. So again, the 88 is the middle number between our two boundaries. So think of those values as being like boundaries. What's in the center? That's what goes in the absolute value bars, the middle number between our boundaries. On the other side, the 42 represents that distance from that middle number to get to the upper boundary and then to get to the lower boundary. So the last thing that it says write an inequality. We need to figure out which way our inequality symbol goes. Jaden, do you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask, why again did you put negative 88 instead of positive 88?
So the reason there is a negative 88 there is because there is a general form for equations, and the general form for the equation has a minus in it. So like there's a standard way to write equations, and that minus is in the standard equation. And we will talk about this more throughout the year. You would have seen these back in Algebra 1 when you did these types of problems. But like there's a standard equation, a standard form, and every standard equation has a minus sign in it. So you have to think of the minus sign not being a part or attached to the 88, but just being part of the formula to write an equation. Does that make sense, Jaden?
Yeah, thank you. That
So
helped.
don't think of it as like being attached to the 88. It's really separate. So this is
just the formula.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes. Somebody else had their hand up. Maddie, did you have a question?
Yeah, if the number like were to be like a negative number, would you change it to an addition sign, or would you keep it as subtraction?
You would change it to an addition sign, because if it were a negative number, let's just say it were negative 88, so the x minus is part of the formula, And then do you usually leave a problem as like a minus negative in an equation?
No, that's why I was asking because it
Yeah,
would change the
it would
positive,
change.
like plus.
Exactly.
So I was just checking to make sure
Yep.
you would still do that.
No, that is a perfect question. I'm glad you're thinking. That's awesome. Yeah. And again, like we will be kind of focusing, we will do like 8 different types of equations this year, and they will all have this same formula. So we will really be focusing on that like aspect of the equation. Good questions. All right. So the last thing that we have to do is make this an inequality. And when you make the inequality, you're going to go to your upper number. Our length of snakes, it says, range from 46 to 180. So the length of snakes for this garter snake is between 46 and 180. So you go to your max number. The inequality is based off of the max number. Are you shading lower than the max number, or are you shading greater than the max number? That's the inequality symbol that's going to go and finish our absolute value inequality. So it's going to go right in between there. So since we're shading less than our max number, we place a less than inequality symbol. So I'm going to rewrite this equation just so that it looks a little neater because I have things boxed and circled. So my absolute value equation is x minus 88 because 88 is the middle number. It's less than because we're shading less than the largest value. And then 42 is the distance from the middle number to those 2 boundary lines. So the absolute value of x minus 88 is less than 42. Just to show you the difference in the equation, the last one we just graphed was a greater than, and I can see that I shaded greater than the largest number. So that's why my inequality was a greater than symbol for number 22 that we looked at. So you can see the difference of when it would be a greater than symbol when it's shaded above the largest number, or a less than symbol when it's shaded below the largest number. Questions? So what I'd like you to do is look at the last problem, number 28. It is exactly the same, except we're dealing with one of my favorite animals at the zoo. I love the elephants. I could probably stand there and watch the elephants for half an hour and just watch them move around. So one of my favorite animals. See if you can graph this on a number line and try and write the corresponding inequality now that you've kind of seen how we went through number 26. So try and redo this problem. Use that same thought process that we just went over. Anybody else like the elephants? Hopefully you all like the elephants. Ava, do you like the elephants?
Yeah.
Oh, good. Do you have a question, Ava?
No, I don't.
Okay, I'm glad you like the elephants. The 2 baby elephants are no longer babies because they're like now teenagers. They were born the same year my oldest daughter was born. That's always, I remember how old they are. They turned 12 this summer. Little fact, I go to the zoo a lot. I like the zoo. It's still pretty safe, even with COVID. Like, it's still a nice place. You're outside, you can still go to the zoo. Would somebody like to try and be a brave volunteer and kind of work us through this problem? How about anybody want to start us with the first thing you're finding with the problem to try and write the equation? Maddie, what do you think?
Okay. I put like the 3,600 and then the 6,000 on each end, and then did the middle number. So I got 4,800.
Okay, looks good.
And then I did what the distance was, and I got 1,200.
Excellent.
and then I put that into the inequality form. I didn't get the symbol yet, but
Okay,
I
that's fine.
got x minus 4,800, and then where the symbol would go, and then 1,200.
Perfect. Nice job. So the middle number, think about that. If it's in the middle of the absolute value symbols, then it should be in the middle of our two boundaries. So the mass of the elephants varies from 3,600 to 6,000 kilograms. So the middle of that mass goes in the middle of the absolute value symbols. And then it's saying that their mass varies or ranges from those two values. So again, if that's the range, then the elephants would be in between those two. Cody, do you know what inequality symbol we would have?
Less than.
Excellent.
And also, wait, would we put an like equal to under that? Because
You know what,
it
that's
says
a good,
from
yeah, we could put an equal to under that. I guess above here, does it also say, let's see, in
because
length?
it doesn't
Yeah, we
say
would
like
put,
in
yep,
between.
exactly. We would put an equal to. Nice catch there, Cody. Good job. Nice thing to recognize. So are there questions on writing those inequalities? We're going to do one more on the review worksheet that I have. Julia.
How do you know which sign to put?
That's a good question. So you're going to go to the largest number, the highest number, and look at the direction that it's shading. Because you're looking at a range means it varies or it goes in between these numbers, and it is less than the largest number. If I look at the graph that I have right underneath, this was for number 22. The biggest number here is going greater than, which is why my symbol in this equation for number 22 is greater than. So this is a greater than symbol because we shaded above the biggest number. So if you're going above the biggest number, it's greater than. If you're going below the biggest number, then it's less than. Or to the left of the biggest number, it's less than. So essentially, if you're shading in the middle, it's less than. If you're shading away, it's greater than. So greater than represents like the outside. Less than represents the middle. Other questions? These are good questions. Okay, so I'm going to pull out the review worksheet. And I understand that this is where it gets a little tricky. So you can either, if you have two devices and you're zooming on one device and using your iPad for the other device to write on, awesome. But I'm going to pull out the review worksheet for today. This review worksheet is open for you on Google Classroom. If you don't want to go to it right now, just get a piece of notebook paper and you can write these problems down on notebook paper and continue to do your homework on notebook paper, or you can then go to your iPad and fill them in later. But I want to go through just like a word problem or two with you, just so that you feel comfortable with the word problems. And we're going to do number 2 because number 2 is an inequality, absolute value inequality again. So it makes sense to go through one more of these together as a class. So if you just want to write this down on paper, or if you have two devices that you're watching the Zoom through the one and you're using your iPad through the other, you can find this on Google Classroom.
Just posted too.
And it is posted, it just posted. So it should be there for you to find. I also posted a split screen. I will repost another direction for a split screen so that you can split your screen in two if you want to use your iPad with two screens running. That's always an option for you to use too. I think a lot of people have two devices going at the same time. That's what I have, but it doesn't have to be what you have. Okay, so looking at number 2, your woodshop instructor requires you to cut several pieces of wood within 3/16 of an inch of his specifications. One piece of wood is specified to be 7 1/4 inches. So your goal is to cut a piece of wood the length of that wood is supposed to be 7 1/4 inches. That's what the wood is supposed to be cut to. Now we know that everybody isn't going to be exactly that precise, especially if you're just beginning to learn how to use the saw. So the goal is for you to get that cut to be within 3/16 of an inch of his required specification. Write an absolute value inequality for the acceptable lengths of the piece of wood. And then it says solve the absolute value inequality to find the largest and the smallest acceptable lengths. So I'm going to do this graphically, just like we did the other problems. I'm going to draw a number line right here as part A. Our piece of wood is supposed to be 7 1/4 inches. That's what he says, Mr. Derby. If you have Mr. Derby, you know Mr. Derby. He's one of the woodshop guys. Mr. Scarpese is the other one. Ninth graders, you might not have gotten a chance to meet them yet. But they want you to cut a piece of wood that's 7 1/4 inches. So I'm cutting this wood. So pretend this number line is my wood. I'm cutting it at 7 1/4 inches. So that's going to go in the middle. You're allowed to be off by 3/16 of an inch. Can anybody explain how that would be represented on our number line? Like, what does that mean? So it says the wood should be within 3/16 of his specifications. Ava, what's that mean?
So does that mean it could be 3/16 like to the left or 3/16 to the right?
Perfect, yeah. So, sorry, I'm gonna get a different color here. So that means that I could go 3/16 in this direction. Or I could go 3/16 in this direction. So now I have a picture. Let's see if we can take that picture and write our inequality, our absolute value inequality. So the specification means you can be off a little bigger or a little smaller than the 7/14, which helps create our inequality and our absolute value graph. So I would have an x minus. The middle of our graph is the cut that we're supposed to make because that's in the center of my picture right now. So that's 7 1/4. Remember, the distance on either side of that is the number that goes on the other side of our absolute value, that 3/16. So 3/16 in either direction is what the absolute value is equal to. And then the last part, it has to be within these values. So it's allowed to go in between or up to those two values. And again, if I go to the largest number and I'm going less than that, that means my inequality should be less than. And it can be equal to, as Cody said before, it doesn't say that it can be within that. So it's allowed to be 3/16 of an inch off. So within that value, up to that value, containing that value. Questions about getting the inequality? So I'm going to leave you to do part B. I will give you a little suggestion. I would take this 7 1/4 and I would make it an improper fraction. Don't keep it as a mixed number. We can't really solve equations with mixed numbers. So I'll start you off here and then I'm going to leave you to do the rest of this. So that becomes 29/4. And then remember, you'll have to separate this into two parts. Any questions before I go back up and do question 1 with you? Ava?
Okay, so this might be like I don't know. Okay, so once you split it and you solve both sides, and then you like plug both of the answers back in because you'll get like two answers. Is there only one of them that works?
Nope, both of them will work because it says find the smallest and the largest acceptable lengths. So essentially, you're trying to find these two numbers on either side of our 7 1/4. That's what we're trying to find.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, so both of them will work. So one's going to be the smaller, like if you cut too small, then I know what my number can be if it's too small. If you make it too large, then I know what my number can be if I make it too large. Other questions? Awesome questions. I'm so glad you guys are asking questions. All right, so I'm going to take you back up to the top. I'm going to take a little pause here, and I want to do the other word problem so that you feel confident that you've got 2 word problems started and hopefully you can work through solving them. So this one is a little different. This is actually to the type of the word problem that we looked at the very first day of school in section 1-2. That's where we started. Adult tickets for a school play cost $8 and student tickets cost $5, which is, I think, what our school play typically is. It might be a little more, it might be 10 and 8 this year or last year, but around that price. For one showing of the play, there were 125 tickets sold. This piece of information is really important. That's the total amount of tickets that were sold for one showing. The revenue from that was $790. That's what they brought in. So from selling the tickets, they sold $790 worth of tickets. Letter A says write an equation to model this situation. Don't forget to label your variable or variables first. We're going to try to do this in one variable because we're given 2 different types of information, adult versus student tickets, and then we're also given the total amount of tickets that were sold. So because we have that total amount of tickets, we can try and write an expression to represent each one of those. So we have adult tickets and we have student tickets. Somebody, it doesn't matter who. What kind of variable do you want to label with the adult? Anybody's favorite variable? Brooke, do you have a favorite variable?
B.
Sure, okay. B, you like B for Brooke, right?
No, it was the first one that came to my head.
Oh, okay. Well, that works too. So we will use B. So an odd variable to choose, but nothing wrong with it, Brooke. So our adult tickets are going to be represented by B. Now I want you to think, how can I use the numbers in the problem to write an expression for the student tickets? So I don't want you to use a different variable. I don't want you to use a C or an A. I want you to use the number in the problem to write an expression for the student tickets. How could we do that? So I know I have B adult tickets. I have 125 total. So Ava, how could we write an expression to represent the student tickets?
Could you do B minus 3?
Think you're on the right track. You're really close. What other number is in here? How many tickets have we sold?
125.
So if I sold 125 and B of those tickets were adults, the leftover tickets would be students. So if I sell 50 adult tickets, the way I get the number of students would be to take 125 minus the 50 adult tickets. So that would be the expression to represent the student tickets. So using that total and subtracting the adult tickets. So now we're going to try and create an equation. We have the variables labeled. We have our information over there. The adults were $8, so that goes along with B. The students were $5. Well, students are 125 minus B. Again, trying to keep one variable because we're writing one equation. Write an equation, one single equation. We have an equal sign. What's the equation equal to? Maddie, sorry. What's the equation equal to?
790.
Yeah. All right, so we now have part A done. We have an equation to model the situation. We labeled our variables. Part B, how many adult tickets were sold? How many student tickets were sold? You're going to solve the equation for part B. And then part C says how much revenue was earned from the adult tickets, how much revenue was earned from the student tickets. So after you figure out how many adult tickets you sell, then you can figure out how much money you made from them. So part C kind of follows the answer that you get in part B. The rest of this review worksheet are just equations and inequalities on the back. So it's just, there's a whole bunch of equations and inequalities for you to solve through. There is an answer sheet that is posted with this assignment on Google Classroom. On Tuesday, I'll take the first 5-10 minutes of class and answer any quick questions that you have. So come to class Tuesday morning, 8:30. We'll answer some quick questions, and then I'll release you and you will take your quiz on Chapter 1. The quiz will be on a Google form, but there's still work that'll be embedded in the problems in the Google form. Questions? So I want you all to have a fantastic weekend. Madison, question?
So are there going to be questions where we have to show our work? Like, how would we do that on a Google form?
You're still gonna show your work, and then you're gonna upload the picture attached with the answer in the Google form. So there's an option for me to allow you to upload a picture. So you're just gonna take a picture of that problem, and then you're gonna upload it right directly with the answer that you chose.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, does that make sense? Okay. Other questions? Julia?
Wait, so like we would do our work like on a piece of loose leaf and then upload that?
Exactly, yes. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Any other questions? All right, have a fantastic weekend. I'll be around for another couple of minutes if you need to stick around and ask me any other questions. Thank you all for an amazing first week. I truly appreciate your hard work this week. Ella, question?
How do you do number 6 on the 1.7 worksheet?
1.7, number 6. All right, let's look at this one here. So this is the number that I'm going to plug into the equation. What does it say here? Determine whether the number is a solution. So we're going to put in -6. So I'm taking 1/2 times -6. And I want to see, does this equal 5? So if I multiply -1/2 and -6 together, Ella, do you know what -1/2 times -6 is?
+3.
Yeah. What's 2 plus 3 make?
5.
Does the absolute value of 5 equal 5?
Yes.
Yes, that's it. I like to put a little check mark next to it to show that it works. You don't have to. That's just me and Mrs. Kane thing. But
Do you have the other side, like with a -5?
You do not have to do the other side, no. So you're only plugging it into the equation directly as it's written. You're not solving anything. You're just checking to see, does that number work?
Okay.
So for
Thank
2
you.
and 4, you do it the same way. You're just checking into the original equation. So anytime you're checking an answer, it goes back to the original given equation. You're welcome. Any other questions? All right, ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic weekend. Thanks for joining me. See you Tuesday.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Have a good weekend.
Thanks, you too.